like a 3-page. This got a 3-page review in 9. They sent me the review. Whoops. Let me get out of here and back here again. There we go. Got a 3-page review in 9, and they said you will be shaking your head in disbelief, and you guys will be shaking your head in disbelief. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So sit back and relax and be prepared for a good story. So anyway, so let me start out with September 20th, 1932, and the Cubs had just clinched the National League pennant with a record of 90 wins and 64 losses and 4 games in front of the second place Pittsburgh Pirates. And the Chicago Daily Tribune was rather stunned by this accomplishment, and they reported that, quote, never before what was a team beset with more irritating experiences than apart from the playing of baseball. President William Beck, Senior, didn't think they had much pitching, but Lon Warnke was a rookie, and he came up and won 22 games and lost only 6. The mighty Hack Wilson had been traded that off season, but Johnny Moore came up, and he I can't remember how well he did, but it was over 300. So anyway, but there was also the obvious bad blood between William Beck and the Cubs' talented but a thoroughly disagreeable manager, Rogers Hornsby. And the Sporting News pointed out, as you can see here, that the season provided the Cubs with, quote, a succession of varied thrills. And tops on the list of both the Tribune and the Sporting News was the July 6th shooting of their star shortstop, Billy Jurges, in, as the Sporting News says in this issue, quote, an episode of unrequited love. Okay. Now, the sensational shooting of a popular baseball player by his former lover, Violet Popovich was her name, immediately captured the public's attention, and everyone wanted to know exactly what had happened in room 509 of Chicago's Hotel Carlos. In just a few hours after reporters first heard the news, Chicago newspapers were on the newsstands with these banner headlines. Look in the Daily Times where it says singer and ball player wounded in love tiff gunplay, girl wounded in hotel mystery, both will live. Now, while working, Sam said, while working on a previous book, I read about the shooting incident in a few Cubs histories, but the authors provided little information besides a few cursory comments. He says, I felt that this story really made the Cubs season particularly intriguing. I set out to find quite a few more details about it. And newspaper articles. I went through all the Chicago newspapers page by page. Only I got the Tribune online, but that was about the only one. So I went through the rest of them looking for information, and they provided day-by-day coverage, interviews with Billy, with Violet, and a few other people too. Chicago court records were invaluable, as Violet's father was physically abusive to his wife. There was a long, drawn-out divorce, and the 8-year-old Violet, in fact, had to testify at the divorce hearing. I interviewed Billy's daughter and his grandson extensively, and they were very, very cooperative. And Violet's 2 nephews, I interviewed both of them too. So, July 1, 1932, the Chicago Cubs were in first place in the National League, and they were in the thick of a tight pennant race. And a player who was contributing to the Cubs' success was 24-year-old shortstop Billy Jurges. And on the morning of July 6th, Billy was getting ready for a big game with the Philadelphia Phillies. And the Cubs were now in third place, 3 games behind the Pirates. And at about 9:45 in the morning, Violet Popovich called him from her room 111 here at the Hotel Carlos, and saying she wanted to see him. And he told her to, come on up. And about 10:15, she knocked on his door, room 509, and his room was right here at the top floor, upper right. They had been going out for about a year, but he had recently called things off. He said in an interview that he wanted to concentrate on baseball. They were in the thick of the pennant race. He wanted to spend his time on baseball. Also, I got the impression, he was young, single, wanted to have a good time, was as much as he could during the off season. And she was getting kind of serious there. But anyway, she wanted to talk about their relationship. And as the conversation grew heated, she asked him for a glass of water, and he left the room to get it. Well, as I said, this is kind of a bad career move on Billy's part, as you can see here. While he was getting it, she pulled a small caliber revolver from her purse, and as the New York Times said, he made a wild lunge for the gun, and in the ensuing struggle, as I say in the movies, 3 shots rang out. One bullet struck Billy in the right side, ricocheted off a rib there, and came out his right shoulder. In fact, the doctor said that hitting that rib really saved his life, because otherwise he probably would have been in really bad shape. A few decades after this shooting, Billy said he bled like a pig, and I'm sure he was bleeding like a pig. Another bullet grazed Billy's the little finger of his left hand, and another bullet went up Violet's hand. It hit her at the base of her thumb and went up about 6 inches. As luck would have it, the team's physician, John C. Davis, happened to be there. He treated them both, and they were taken to a local hospital. Now, the Chicago newspapers naturally pounced on this story, and as they say nowadays, it went viral. Violet stayed at the Illinois Masonic Hospital for a couple of days, as did Billy, but then later she was moved to the Bridewell Hospital because it was right next to the Cook County Jail, and she was booked on a charge of assault with intent to kill. And note, you can see her bandaged left arm there in this photograph over here. This is an original wire photo, and a lot of these are original wire photos from my collection. In the meantime, the police searched Violet's hotel room, and they found these 2 photographs here. They also found a note addressed to her brother in which she said, quote, "To me, life without Billy isn't worth living. But why should I leave this earth alone? I'm going to take Billy with me." Well, that's kind of foreboding right there, isn't it? But then, hold off, she kind of reversed track here a little bit. And then after she got arrested and everything, she told the police, no, it's all a mistake. The note was simply a result of, quote, too much gin, and that she only wanted to kill herself to make Billy sorry for breaking up with her. And she said in an interview that when Billy was out of the room getting her a glass of water, quote, "I pulled out my revolver, intending to kill myself. Bill saw me and grabbed the gun. We fought for it. We really fought for it. The gun kept exploding, but I didn't want to hurt him," unquote. Now, Violet made the newspapers almost daily, particularly on July 15th, 1932 in Chicago, the day of her arraignment. The Chicago American said that when she entered the courtroom with her attorneys, the crowd gasped at her radiant beauty. And the Daily Illustrated Times wrote that she was a symphony in red and white, with her red lipstick matching her red and white striped dress here, and her shoes as well. Note her bandaged left arm there. I love this photograph here, and I got it from a newspaper reporter. I got the original negative, like a 4x4 negative in the original sleeve, all labeled nicely. To my knowledge, it was never published during all this, and he pulled it out of a drawer and sent it to me. And I looked and I couldn't find it published anywhere. And it's the only full-length shot of Violet I ever found. I just love this photograph. Now, the 2 attorneys were kind of a big wheels in Chicago, and I wondered who paid her legal bills. And a guy at a SABR meeting yesterday, and his father used to be a crime reporter, and he covered Sacco and Vanzetti, the Lindbergh kidnapping, and a lot of other ones back in the 30s, did a few books on it. Noel Hind is his name, and he told me that back then, a lot of newspapers paid legal costs for people, knowing that they get a sensational story and some interviews out of it. And that may have been the case here, but she was interviewed by a lot of papers. I don't know which one it could have been. I know the Chicago American interviewed her quite a bit. Anyway, Billy and the Cubs wanted all this to just quietly go away. This is another favorite photograph of mine. And Billy refused to press charges. The judge dismissed the case. This is in the courtroom. Billy is not blowing his nose there. He's hiding his face from photographers. Violet's looking rather demurely at one of her 2 attorneys there. The courtroom's packed. Violet's mother's back there. Some of her showgirl friends are back there. Some of Billy's Cubs teammates are in that group too. Again, this is one of my favorite photographs. Okay, now you're going to be shaking your head with disbelief, as I said before. Billy refused to sign a complaint. In fact, the judge asked Billy what he wanted to do. He said, "Oh, let's just forget the whole thing." But that didn't stop Violet from signing a contract to appear in the Bear Cub Follies, and we don't mean B-E-A-R here, as a singer under her stage name, Violet Ballet, and she billed herself as you can see here, the girl who shot for love. And the State Congress Theater was a burlesque house. The sign there says it was Chicago's greatest burlesque. On South State Street in a real seedy area known for its rundown, dingy hotels, its saloons, its burlesque theaters as well. And I was fortunate enough, I love this ad. I found this ad by going through the Chicago Record and Examiner page by page. Here they call it the Bear Cub Frolics, but other papers call it the Bear Cub Follies. But I found a detailed review in the Chicago Daily News that talked about exactly what went on at a burlesque show. And I found and the Bear Cub girls lasted an hour, by the way. And I found out that how much clothes were taken off depending upon the applause each Bear Cub girl received from the audience. The greater the applause, the more removal of the clothes. The reviewer was a well-respected editor for the Chicago Daily, for the Daily News. And he wrote a long review of Violet's show. People expected her to take her clothes off, but no, the reviewer wrote that she sang her song in a so-so voice, not great, but it was a good voice. She bowed as the audience clapped sporadically, and she left the stage, quote, without a single gesture of salaciousness. Violet's nephew, Mark Prescott, the son of her brother Mark, told me that her singing career didn't exactly take off and that her lack of success may have stemmed from her lack of talent. She liked to sing, he told me, quote, that is, she tried to sing. But she had other problems too, as you can see here. She was back in the judge's courtroom after a bail bondsman, a part-time real estate agent, but a full-time hustler, full-time con man, stole her Billy Jurges love letters, saying he wanted to publish them in ballparks and sell them in ballparks around the country under the title Love Letters of a Shortstop. But as it turned out, what he really wanted to do was blackmail Billy and get about $25,000 out of him. This scheme didn't work. Violet took him to court. It went back and forth in court a few times, and she finally got her letters back. She was soon back on the stage, and she was singing here at the Kitty Davis Cocktail Lounge in Chicago. She was also singing a man named Fred Williams, who worked in the office of his father's hardware store. They applied for a marriage license, never married. By 1940, Violet and her mother had moved from Chicago and they were living in Los Angeles. Now, a few years ago, Mark Prescott, her nephew, learned of my research. He contacted me. He offered me family photographs, personal insights. He got me in touch with his cousin. I talked to him quite a bit too. And with some more research, additional details emerged about the sad, rather strange saga of Violet Popovich. I love this photograph here. You know, she looks so sweet, innocent, you know. Of course, she had this problem later on of pulling a gun out of her purse, but in this photograph here, she looks like she had not a care in the world. Here's Violet's father, Mirko Popovich, Mike. He changed his name to Mike. He was an Austrian immigrant who arrived at Ellis Island in 1907. He was an electrician by trade. He moved to Chicago in 1910. He married one Margaret Heindel, also from Austria, and they had 4 children, of which Violet was the oldest, born in 1911. The marriage was not at all a very happy one. When Violet was only 10 days old, her father began beating his mother, beating Violet's mother, beating his wife, giving her black and blue marks. The couple got divorced in 1920 on the grounds of, quote, extreme and repeated cruelty. In fact, 8-year-old Violet even had to testify at the divorce hearing, which must have
Hmm.
been awful. Child support came very slowly, even though Mirko had a very good job as an electrician. Margaret was forced to put all of her children in the Ulick Children's Home in Chicago, which is still standing, still going strong, run by the Lutheran Church. Violet said in interviews that she was married when she was 18, a puppy love affair with a schoolboy, she said, but they got divorced 6 months later. And by the way, the Violet and her brothers were there in the children's home for a few years anyway. And at one point, the father wanted to take the oldest boy back with him to live with him, and he refused. And I researched in those archives at the Chicago History Museum. And I came across a letter from the administrator saying that the young boy, I think it was Mark, told him that no, he didn't want to move with his father, that the orphanage was the only real home he had ever known. Right after a divorce, she enrolled in a dancing school. In the early 1930s, she joined the chorus of the Chicago production of Vanities, Earl Carroll's Vanities. Earl Carroll was a big showman in New York. He had these shows called Vanities, and first edition, second edition, third edition, whatever. He was very famous for his elaborate shows, elaborate sets, the scantily clad, sometimes almost nude showgirls. This is a souvenir pamphlet. At the bottom, it says, it's billed as America's Greatest Review. And right above that is his motto, engraved on his New York theater, through these portals, past the most beautiful girls in the world. Now, in the summer of 1931, Violet met Billy Jurges at a party. A year later, the two of them had their dramatic meeting and confrontation at the Hotel Carlos. She sang at the burlesque show and also sang in nightclubs, and eventually moved to Los Angeles in 1940. Back when she told an interviewer that I met Billy at a party, and if it wasn't love at first sight, it was just about second. We'll continue with Violet, but let's get back to Billy and the Cubs for a little bit. And here are the team's infielders. There's Woody English, Billy Herman, later a Hall of Famer, Charlie Grimm, the team captain, Stan Hack, they call him Smiling Stan Hack for obvious reasons, and Billy Jurges. Charlie Grimm was first base. Woody and Stan Hack were at third. And Woody was sometimes shortstop when Billy was out. And of course, Billy Herman was second, and shortstop was Billy Jurges. Billy rejoined the team on July 22nd. Remember, he got shot on July 6th, had the arraignment on July 15th, back playing on July 22nd. After their loss to Pittsburgh that day, they found themselves 3.5 games behind the league leading Pirates. And everyone was under a lot of stress. And on top of that, there were all these whispered comments within the Cubs organization, which centered on the obvious animosity between club president William Veeck Sr. and the manager Rogers Hornsby. And Veeck believed that the team was easily good enough to win the National League pennant. And he was growing pretty darn sick and tired to hear about what Rogers Hornsby complaining about the men and how awful they were. Billy Herman said that, quote, he was one of the greatest hitters that ever lived, maybe the greatest. But he never talked hitting with us. He just expected us to go up there and do it. Things continued to get worse. The loss to the Brooklyn Dodgers on August 2nd put the Cubs 5 games behind the first place Pirates. That evening, Veeck fired Hornsby and appointed as manager the very popular and first baseman and team captain and Charlie Grimm. They call him he called himself the left-handed banjo player. William Veeck was concerned about Billy's recovery right after the shooting. Moreover, there was also the loss of the team player manager, Rogers Hornsby. So Veeck brought in infielder Mark Koenig to help out his shortstop. He used to play with the Yankees. And he proved to be an excellent choice, as he definitely helped the Cubs clinch the pennant on September 20th. And he batted .353 during the last part of the season, he played 33 games from August 14th to the end of the season, September 25. Now each team would get a share of the World Series bonus money, a share of the World Series gate receipts, and the players got to vote on how much each player got, either a half share or a full share, but it had to be unanimous to get a full share. And two players, Billy Herman and Billy Jurges, voted not to give him a full share, only a half share, because he only played in 33 games. I think 154 games, he played in 33. But as everybody admitted, though, I think even Billy Jurges said, oh, he definitely helped us win the pennant, but he only played in 33 games. Instead, they gave him a half share. Now, the New York Yankees, the Cubs World Series opponents, they didn't take too kindly to this. They were Mark Koenig's former team. And when their newspapers announced the breakdown of the World Series money, the Yankees, and Babe Ruth in particular, denounced the Cubs as penny pinchers and chiselers and cheapskates. Said Babe Ruth, I hope we beat them 4 straight. They gave Koenig a sour deal in his player cut. They're chiselers, and I tell them so. Well, here's a familiar pose. You've probably seen this many times. The Cubs were down 2-0 in the World Series when Game 3 was played in Chicago. And there was all this, they say, as they call it, bench jockeying back and forth between the teams and between the fans. All this, people yelled, the Cubs were yelling at the Yankees, Yankees were yelling at the Cubs. I think the Cubs were particularly vicious. In the 5th inning, the score is tied 4-4, and Babe Ruth is on the plate facing the hard-nosed pitcher, Charlie Root. The count was at 2 balls and 2 strikes. And there goes Babe Ruth raising 2 fingers of his right hand. And did he signal that that was only 2 strikes? And did he gesture to the Cubs dugout there on the third base side? Did he gesture to the contemptuously to Charlie Root? Or did he point to center field and signal that he was going to hit a home run? That is, did he call his shot? Now, what person saw depended on the angle of how they viewed the game, where they were sitting, the angle of the view. Babe Ruth did indeed hit a home run. Lou Gehrig followed that with a home run of his own. And the Cubs lost that game 7-5. There's a demoralized Gabby Hartnett, the catcher in the back there. They lost the following game. In fact, they lost all 4 games of the World Series, just as Babe Ruth had hoped they would. They didn't even win 1 game. Now, of course, whether or not Babe Ruth called his shot has been debated ever since October 1, 1932. There are at least 2 books on it. Both of them, I think, are called The Called Shot. But what I found out in the course of my research, and one of them, books in particular, had, I think, an appendix, went into great detail about all the newspapers said, whether he pointed, whether he didn't point, or what he did with his hands. Did he just gesture with his hand? Did he do this? Did he do that? But what I found, that opinions about whether he did or did not point do not fall along partisan lines. And I found Cubs who emphatically maintained that he did point to center field, while Yankees who said just as emphatically that he did not, that it all stemmed from this article over here, that the Yankees saw this and said, hey, we're just going to keep quiet. This is a great story. We're going to keep quiet about it. Frankie Cosetti, though, admitted later on that that wasn't true, that, we just knew it was a good story and we decided to keep quiet, though he didn't point. But Guy Bush razzed, pitcher Guy Bush for the Cubs razzed Babe Ruth unmercifully. He was probably the principal heckler. And he said, oh, yeah, he pointed. I was there. I saw him. He maintained all his life. He'd write fans saying Babe Ruth pointed to center field. Pat Piper, the on-field was announcer, he kind of called the games on the field for like 40 years, maybe 30, 40 years. And he just as emphatically said, I was there, I saw him, he called his shot. Now, according to the hard-nosed Charlie Root, he said that if Ruth had tried to show him up by signaling where he was going to point, quote, anybody who knows me knows that Ruth would have ended up on his ass. But then that would have put Lou Gehrig on base. And I wonder whether he really would have done that. And as as you know, Lou Gehrig hit a home run too. But one of my favorite stories is it was in a Charlie Root biography. In fact, the author spoke to a SABR group a few days ago. Charlie brooked no interference on this topic, and not even his family members were immune to what would happen if someone dared point. During a family picnic, they're all playing, his family members were playing a game of wiffle ball. Charlie Root was pitching. Charlie Root Jr. was there. Charlie Root Jr.'s wife was at bat, and she took a wiffle ball bat and, raised it to center field. Bad move on Charlie Jr.'s wife's part. He wound up and just threw the ball as hard as he could, hit her on the neck, knocked her to the ground. And this subject bothered him his whole life. And he said right before he died, he told his daughter, I gave my whole life to baseball, and I'm going to be remembered for something that never happened. But as biographers say, and as I maintain and in my book, what does it really matter? Whatever happened, only Babe Ruth, his extraordinary power, his charismatic presence, could have transformed a few moments of baseball into American legend. As Charlie Grimm said, a great guy hit that homer, the greatest slugger of all time. Let me just ad-lib a couple things here if we have some time here. Kennesaw Mountain Landis was baseball commissioner at that time. And as luck would have it, I was a librarian for 40 years at the University of Mary Washington at Fredericksburg. And one of my students in one of my classes was Kennesaw Mountain Landis's nephew. His name was Tim Landis. And of course, he collects stuff about his uncle. And his father was at that game with Kennesaw Mountain Landis. And his father said all his life, he may still even be living, but I'm not sure. He was living a few years ago. I know he was rather upset when they took Kennesaw Mountain Landis's name off the Most Valuable Player award. But, I was there. I saw him point. And I said, Tim, it depends on where you were sitting. No, my father was there. He saw him point. So that was kind of a neat side note to all this stuff here. I also discuss in my book the rest of Billy's career, including his rather disastrous 1959-1960 seasons as manager of the Boston Red Sox. When you become a manager, Billy later told an interviewer, you have to have a team that is coming up. All of my players on the Red Sox were finishing up their careers, and there was not much I could do here. Billy did his best, but he was let go in June 1960 with a rather disappointing major league managerial record of 59, 63, and a winning percentage of just .484. He finished his career as a very, very well-respected baseball scout and instructor. Harmon Killebrew Hall of Fame, Eddie Matthews Hall of Fame, both of them said publicly that they owe their success, a lot of their success to Billy, because he was a instructor during spring training for a lot of teams, or several teams anyway, maybe not a lot, but several. And Eddie Matthews and then Harmon Killebrew were two of his pupils. Lost in all this, Billy had a rocky relationship with the Boston press too, but during his tenure there as manager, they brought in Pumpsy Green, and the first African American on the Boston Red Sox, and he came in 1960, as I recall. Maybe it was 59. I'm not sure now. 59, I guess. But at that point, then all the Major League Baseball was integrated. Billy quit the baseball life in the early 1980s to take care of his ailing wife, Mary, who died in '84. Several years later, Billy remarried, and as he put it, he and his wife, Phyllis, quote, enjoyed the good life in Largo, Florida. They traveled together. They'd visit with ball players who lived nearby, like Phil Cavaretta, the mighty first baseman of the Cubs for decades, lived nearby, visit with him. He'd socialize with former teammates at baseball functions as well. Billy was not a powerful hitter at all. He worked on it all his baseball career, but he compensated for that with his really solid defensive skills. In fact, that's what got him trouble in Boston. He'd always fuss and fume with the infielders. You got to make the double play. A good infielder makes a double play. During his 17 years in the major leagues, from 1931 to 1947, he led the National League shortstops in fielding percentages 4 times, 1932, 35, 37, 39, and once in double plays turn in 1935. He batted 258 in 1,816 games, and he collected 1,613 hits. He was with the Cubs from 1931 to 1938, then with the New York Giants for a while, and he finished up his career back with the Cubs from 46 to 47. He was diagnosed with cancer in 1991. He entered the hospital in March 97 and died a few weeks later on March 3rd at the age of 88. Okay, we'll finish up with Violet here. And as I said, by 1940, Violet and her mother, Margaret Heindel, had moved from Chicago and settled in Los Angeles, California. And she always considered herself a professional singer and had these professional photos, glamour shots, if you will, taken of herself to try to get back on the stage. Unfortunately, despite these photographs, she didn't seem to have much of a singing career. She had little luck in launching a West Coast singing career. I love these photographs. I love the one of her in that. I guess that's a cape or something, and those short shorts and everything. A couple of those are in my book. I extensively interviewed Violet's two nephews about their aunt, who spent her final years in a nursing home. She died on February 25, 2000. Violet was 88 when she died, just like Billy. She was not at a loss for male companionship. I write in my book that her nephew Mark told me that she was at a club right near the Paramount Studios. She worked in the color department of Paramount Studios, and movie actor John Wayne tried to pick her up, or did pick her up, I guess, and took her home. John Wayne, shall we say, did not take his marriage vows too seriously, and he hoped to kind of go inside the house and stay a while and get comfortable, but his hopes were dashed, Mark told me, because Violet's mother was up waiting for her, and so he kind of had to leave her at the doorstep, shall we say. I discussed in my book that, like Violet, the Hotel Carlos had its share of tough times too. It was pretty new. I think it was built maybe 30 or 31. It was pretty new in 1932. Over the years, the residential hotel gradually fell into disrepair. You can see the air conditioner up there in the upper left, that trim kind of falling apart. I love this carved entryway there, but the column over here is all, looks like it's coming apart too. It changed its name. I don't remember when it changed its name, but above the awning, it says Sheffield House Hotel there. It changed its name to the Sheffield House Hotel at some point or another. It didn't look much better back then. In fact, Ed Hartig here, when he and I corresponded quite a bit about Violet and about the Cubs, and he said that passersby would cross to the other side of the street when passing by the hotel. But a real estate company purchased the hotel. They completely remodeled it and renamed it as 3834 North Sheffield. It offered studio apartments to upscale professionals. As you can see here, this is a photograph taken just a couple of years ago, and there's Billy's room is still there on the top floor. Here's my book with a foreword by Tim Wiles, who was a former research director at the Baseball Hall of Fame. I'll have my email address here, just jbales@umw.edu. And I, as Ryan knows here, I had these professional book plates made up featuring the cover of the book. So if anybody would like a signed, inscribed book plate to put in your book, it has, excuse me, the image of the book, just email me and I'll be glad to mail you one. Okay, whoops, I didn't want to show that. Sorry about that. Shoot, I spoiled the surprise here. Anyway, let me end up just something on a light note. I've enjoyed all this research a great deal, writing a great deal, had a great time immersing myself in all these primary sources. The book's heavily endnote in the back with all these original sources. Newspaper articles, court records, interviews. I told Ed Hartig, the Cubs historian, that Now I wanna make Violet a part of my life here too. And then I told Ed, I almost feel like Violet's a part of my life. And Ed said, Jack, you put yourself too much in front of microfilm, step away from the computer for a little while, have a drink, go away from the microfilm, settle down, boy, in other words. But anyway, I decided to make Violet a part of my Christmas card with my son and me and my daughter. And so here's my Christmas card one year. Note the bandage was still on Violet's arm, and on it, I have Violet. I hope you feel better soon. Go Cubs, Jack. Thank you very much. Let me stop my screen share here and get back to you all.
All right, thank you, Jack. That was an awesome presentation. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Let's go ahead and open it up for questions. I'm sure everybody has a lot of questions. Anybody, we'll go ahead. Well, I don't know if I need them. Let's see. Go ahead and unmute and we can go ahead and ask Jack if you have any questions.
Can I say something? If we have some time here. One question I didn't mention this because I was kind of concerned about time, but remember when Violet said she went into there, I want to take Billy with me, but later she backpedaled and said, no, I only wanted to kill myself to make Billy sorry. Well, she kind of lied there. Mark Prescott, Violet's nephew, he overheard Violet talking to his mother, Violet's sister-in-law, talking about the shooting, and she admitted she went into that hotel room with that gun in her purse, wanting to kill Billy Jurges. And the exact quote Mark told me was, "I was very angry and I wanted to kill him." So, I mean, she really did. She kind of lied when. Of course, she had to defend herself later on, but she wasn't telling the truth when she said she only wanted to kill herself.
But the charges were dropped, right, Jack?
Yeah, the charges were dropped because the judge was a big Cubs fan, Judge SABR. In fact, he ran a mortuary and on the side too, and he hid he had gangsters hide booze in his garage, so he was a little bit on the take. In fact, Jonathan Ive in his biography of Al Capone mentions this. He said something like when he wasn't putting them in jail, he was putting them in coffins. And he talked to Billy beforehand. Hey, Billy, what do you want me to do about this? He was a big Cubs fan. He wanted it all to go away. Billy wanted it all to go away. Billy said, let's forget it, And so he asked, well, what's this all about, Billy? And the district attorney or the attorney questioned Billy, and Billy said, I have nothing to say on this matter. I refuse to testify. And so the judge said, then this case is dismissed for a lack of charges, and let us hope no more Cubs get shot. Now, also remember Eddie Wakus got shot by a crazed woman who was in love with him in 1949. And incredibly, Eddie Wakus and Billy had played together for a couple of years, and Eddie had gotten a hit in Billy's last game in September of 1947. So I wonder if they ever compared notes on the two shootings, because they didn't know each other. They played for a couple of years. Now, Bernard Malamud never revealed never talked about where his sources for his book, The Natural, or any of his books, I guess. So I don't really know whether he modeled the shooting of Roy Hobbs in The Natural on the shooting of either Eddie or Billy. But, he had to have known about it, I would think. And, he made it a big part of the book. And of course, it was a major scene in the movie starring Robert Redford. I'd like to think that, one or both of them, was the inspiration for that.
Jack, did Billy and Violet ever have any more meetings?
Oh, that's a great question, Thomas. Yeah, they did meet one other time that I know of anyway. Maybe they were. After the shooting, Violet had a press conference for reporters, and she said something like, I'm gonna get on with my life. If I see Billy again, it'll just be impersonal. And Billy said he never wanted to see her again. But in a footnote in a biography of Rogers Hornsby, maybe Guy Bush said that he was at a bowling alley with Billy and a couple other ball players, and they spotted Violet bowling in a nearby alley. And Guy Bush said, we ran out of there like a bullet, when we saw Violet. We had nothing to do with her. As soon as they saw her, they took off, and that was it. And that's the only time I know of that they saw her anyway,
Did
Jack,
she
I do.
have any other encounters with sport figures? Any
Well,
other
funny- yes,
professional
she did.
athletes?
She was dating Leo Durocher in the 1930s, who was a real womanizer, as you probably know. And she was also dating Al Lopez in the 1930s. And in the 1960s, she rekindled her romance with Al Lopez. And Mark Prescott told me that I think it was 12 years old. He was at a game with Violet at a White Sox game when he was managing, and and Al Lopez came up to the stands to give him a signed baseball. So if you guys know of people who say, I know everything about baseball, here's a trivia question. What showgirl was dating two Hall of Famers who both turned out to be managers of Chicago's two professional baseball teams? Because Al Lopez and Leo Durocher both made the Hall of Fame, and Violet went out with both of them. And I mentioned that Billy broke up with Violet, and in an interview he said that he wanted to concentrate on baseball, and he was single and wanted to see a lot of people. But also, and Billy never said this, but the newspaper said, and Violet said in that infamous letter that was found in her hotel room, she said, gossips began casting aspersions on my character, and I was afraid Billy would start believing the story. So people were telling Billy that Violet was kind of seeing other guys too. And though she maintained that she wasn't, and I want to kill myself to show Billy that I was true only to him. I don't know what was the facts here, but there were stories about Violet in the papers too, that she was seeing other people besides just Billy, and maybe that had something to do with her breaking up too.
Jack, I have a quick question about,
Good question.
this may not
Alice,
have
thank
been the kind of area that you were researching. Do you have any idea where Billy Jurges was buried? Because the burial sites is what I do. Okay.
Now his Wikipedia entry is wrong, and I emailed the grandson to confirm that, because Wikipedia said he was buried at some cemetery. I can't remember which one.
Sylvan Abbey Memorial Park in Clearwater, probably.
No,
Yeah.
that's the grandson, also named Bill. He told me that Billy was cremated, and he himself, the grandson, Bill Price is his name. He scattered his ashes at places that were important to Billy, like a park nearby where they always hung out. And part of the ashes, he made a special trip to Wrigley Field. The Cubs would not let him scatter the ashes on Wrigley Field. I can't remember the name of the locker room guy. He was there for decades, but he and Billy were good friends, and he kind of befriended Bill Price too. He let him have a seat, close to the dugout, or close to the rail there. And when no one was looking, Billy threw the ashes over the rail around by the second base side. He wanted to get close to the short disc. He wanted to get on the field and go by the shortstop, but he couldn't. So he tried to. So he put some ashes as he threw the ashes as far as he could, maybe around the second base side of Wrigley Field. And so I mentioned that to a baseball, I think it was Al Yellen of Bleed Cubby Blue. And he said, one time he was at a game and some lady threw ashes and it got in his companion's eyes. He said that the Cubs, that's one of the reasons the Cubs really frown upon that. And people do it, even to this day, but they don't let. Charlie Grimm was the last person to officially have his ashes put on Wrigley Field. But he said that people kind of surreptitiously try to do this, but the Cubs do not like it at all, for the reason that Al Yellen said, that the ashes start blowing all over the place. I don't think that would happen in the case of Billy's grandson, but I think he did it after the game and he kind of hung around. But yeah, they're there though.
I talked to a fellow who's been to over 4,000 Cub home games.
Oh my God.
And every game for 50 years, I guess.
Wow.
But he said that it's not unusual to see people nervously walk down to the rail with something in their hand and all of a sudden dump something over the side.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that, Fred. That's cool. Yeah, that's neat.
They quickly retreat once they do it.
Oh, yeah, that's what they're doing there. So you kind of spot them going down to the rail there. Yeah, they kind of know what's going on.
Yeah, once they're done, what are they going to do about it? I mean,
Yeah, right.
they can pick them up.
Yeah,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
thank you. But ask, tell him that.
Jack, as time went by after the incident
Yeah.
and Billy's career moved on, how often did this topic come back up again? And what was his reaction as time went by if somebody did bring up this incident?
You know, he was interviewed in 1988 by Jerome Holtzman, and that's about the only time it ever came up in later life. Violet, was kind of made the news here and there. When anniversary of the shooting came up, it was brought up in the newspapers. But he cheerfully gave this interview to Jerome Holtzman. It's in the book, I think, Chicago Day by Day. I think it's called, or Chicago Baseball Day by Day, something like that. And he sat down for an interview, and it was just kind of matter of fact. And he said, yeah, he was shot, and but as he said that. He said in this interview, and I should have mentioned this before, he said during this 1988 interview that I was going out with her. She was going out with a lot of other guys. And she was a beautiful woman and everything. So, but he said, yeah, it kind of broke up with her and I got shot, but, went on with my life. He was kind of matter of fact with it all.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it never really came up. Oh, I know, but should have mentioned this. Now that you mentioned, I interviewed the daughter, and I asked her, and I felt kind of weird about bringing this up. I said, okay, her name was, I can't remember what her name was, but anyway, I asked her, now, did you know that Violet shot your father in 1932? And she admitted that, oh yeah, we knew about it, but quote, this is an exact quote, it was never mentioned in our house, never. So anyway. And I have that in my book too, with emphasis on the word never. And Bill Price was kind of matter of fact about it too. It didn't really bother him all that. And I wondered how he viewed the book, because I'm talking about him, here he is dating this woman, sleeping with her obviously, and then she gets shot, and I wonder how he viewed all that, kind of a, not the nicest episode to have in your grandfather's life. He just loved it. He said, this is a great book. I want to get copies from my family members and everything. I want to talk about it all the time.
Was there any relationship between, I know this is a long shot, Paul Popovich that played for the Cubs?
Yeah, I don't know. I looked on ancestry.com and I couldn't find anything, but that's not saying that there isn't. She was from Austria. I know that. I'm not sure about Paul.
Did the shooting set off any precautions by the White Sox or any other major league team about ball players staying in hotel rooms or admitting people to their rooms? Any
That's a good
hotel
question,
rules?
Thomas. I never saw anything or anything like that. I never read anything about that. I did not research that angle, but I did go through all the newspapers, a lot, and I did a lot of searching online too. I never really saw anything. Billy got beamed by I can't remember who hit him one time. And the pitcher was just absolutely mortified. He said, Billy, you're all right, Billy, you're all right. And the guy kept saying, oh, I'm okay, but he wasn't. And that another hit that year, and I just don't remember who the other guy was, but that did lead to the batting helmets eventually. But to answer your question, Tom, I don't really know about going into people's rooms. I kind of doubt it, I guess, if that ever happened. But that was the Hotel Carlos was called a single room occupancy hotel, and they had a lot of those. And after a while, it was like people could rent them by the week or the 2 weeks, and it really went downhill after a while. But back in the day, though, a lot of the Cubs players stayed there when they were, when they were in town.
That's just a couple of blocks from Wrigley Field, then,
Right.
isn't it?
Yeah, about 2 blocks north of Wrigley Field on Sheffield Avenue. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Right.
I think that's pretty close to the next train stop.
Oh, it is? I did not know that.
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. But the Cubs historian told me he walks right by it on the way to work all the time. He told me, Jack, it's such a dive back then, God, it was awful looking, people would cross the street because of people hanging out in front and everything. In fact, the guy who told me that Billy's room was up there. He sent me photographs of it because he stayed there one night when you could stay there, and he sent me a picture of the 509 on the door, and he sent me all these photographs. And he said, "That's the room. That's the window right there," which I would love to have. I always wondered what room was 509. You know. But he said, "Yeah, it was in pretty bad shape. Had an ornate desk where the hotel clerk sat, but it was kind of a divey place."
Jack, can you tell us, for those of you who don't have your book, where we can find the book and where it's available?
It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. If anyone does get it, please email me and I'll send them a signed book plate. But yeah, it's readily available on Amazon. One more quick story, and I think it was on one of the anniversaries of the shooting. The Chicago Sun-Times held a seance in room 509, hoping to conjure up Billy's spirit, but didn't work. You know. Yeah. I said, you can't make this stuff up, you know. The papers made a big deal when Violet, that guy Fred Williams I mentioned, he got mad at Violet for being too late to leave the Kitty Davis cocktail lounge, and they got in a big argument in the car, and she said, stop the car, let me out." He said, "Okay, you want to let me let out? I'll let you out." And he stopped the car and he opened the door and pushed her out of the car while the car was still kind of going a little bit. And that made the papers. But by then she was going under her maiden name, Margaret Heindel, and the papers didn't put two and two together that Margaret Heindel was the same thing as Margaret Popovich. So I only came across it purely by accident because I started doing the searching under her maiden name as well as her birth name.
Do we have any more questions for Jack?
It's a lot of fun, you guys. I want to come back to your meeting sometime again. I
Yeah, we
enjoyed
were
this.
really happy you were able to join us for SABR Day. It's an honor for us. Thank you for participating and a great presentation. I thought it was great. Look forward to
Yeah.
reading your book.
Yeah, good. Okay. I'm glad I could have more time to ad lib a little bit too. And
Yeah, I
everything. It
think
was
you
nice
worked it
too.
really well.
Yeah. Thanks you guys for having me. It was super.
Thank you very
Enjoyed it.
much.
I appreciate
All
it a
right,
lot.
thank you, everybody.
Thanks for all your good comments.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank
Jack.
you, Jack. Enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, you all. Good
All right.
comments too. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
Be safe, Jack.
Yeah. Thank you. You guys too. Goodbye.
Thanks, Sam. I'll talk with you soon.
All right, Lou. Look forward to
You
it.
all,
Take
everybody.
care.
Stay safe.
you.
Stay
Take care,
socially
everybody.
Be
distant.
safe, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh,
Good
Bye.
to see you, Steve.
Maybe we'll have baseball.
Oh,
Yeah,
please, yes,
will.
please. We will.
July, August,
2023.
who knows? They could be, there's no reason they couldn't have done what they're supposed to do and just agree not to, they don't lock the players out, go through spring training, keep negotiating. But when the owners lock the players out like this, they're really making a statement that they're shooting this whole game in the foot. Old guys like us, we're going to stay loyal to the game, but younger folks, they don't care. They'll go watch soccer. They'll go watch the NBA finals in June. They'll go watch hockey. Baseball's too long for a lot of people anyway. And the owners, the millionaires and the billionaires are going to shoot each other in the foot. And people are going to get sick and tired of watching baseball. They'll watch college baseball. They'll watch high school baseball.
Mhm.
We'll see.
Oh, well.
Okay. We'll wish for the best here. Have a good
Yeah,
night, guys.
all right,
Good night,
take care,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye.